New World, oh New World. I have actually been holding off doing a review on this game until their supposedly big announcement on June 7th of 2024. Well, that day has come and gone, and after their big announcement turning out to be just them practically saying, consoles, and the public having a huge backlash to it, I've been sitting on this wondering on how to go about this review or if I should do one at all. But this is currently my 4th most played game in my Steam list, and I did pour a ton of hours into New World. At one point, I had even considered making this my main game, so I figured I at least owe it my 2 cents for all the hours I spent in here. That said, countless people have already covered all the drama that is going on with that. So I'll be making this review in the usual way that I do most of my review videos. I will take a step back from all that drama and show you everything you can do in the game and every aspect of the game, so that you can make your own opinion about whether this is a game you would like to get into. At the end, of course, I will give you my opinion based on everything I have shown and my personal experience with the game in the past 2 years. This will be a long one, so feel free to skip around using the timestamp in the description. So let's get to it. Let's start from the beginning. The cutscenes aren't bad at all. But it's kinda crazy that we had fully animated cutscenes early on. Because later on, we only get 2D drawings. But they'll be reworking all the early game stuff on Eternum, so we'll have to see how it goes. Character creation is nothing too crazy. We don't get too many options either. No sliders, just pre-made stuff. It's not too bad, I guess. The tutorial does its job, letting us know what to do, even if it makes it seem like the combat will be so slick. It does look a lot darker than the latest few updates we got, but I like having both in the game, so, you know, variety is good. Can I just say how beautiful the environment is? It really is. I often stop to look at stuff in this game. That said, what is that mountain? Do we ever see that in the rest of the island? I don't think so. Maybe that's supposed to be Shattered Mountain, but I don't think it looks quite like that right now. But maybe it looked like that before, who knows. The tutorial also shows us how to equip stuff, how to use consumables, leveling up, and crafting. We'll get back to those last 2 real soon, but let's talk about the story first. The story in New World, it's definitely there. It's nothing fantastic or groundbreaking, but it's not super cookie cutter or uninspired either. In New World, you're a crewmate to what seems to be a Spanish conquistador ship, which got shipwrecked in the storm, and you washed up on a mysterious island, which you later discovered to be Eternum. The twist is that nothing really dies in Eternum, or at least not permanently, and because of that, you can see many entities from several different historical timelines still alive in this island. That said, those who have been revived too many times have lost their minds, while others are infected by the corruption. So it is up to you to find out more about the mysteries in this island. To be completely honest, it is a decent premise for what it is, but this isn't taken advantage of that much. Whether it is with intent or not, a lot in this game reminds me of Destiny. Not only the story of you coming back to life as an immortal to fight evil, but a lot of aspects in this game seem to have at least taken some inspiration from Destiny. But unlike Destiny, the lore in New World is not as extensive or as deep. There's a ton left unexplored, and perhaps because of that, the story of the campaign and the history of Eternum feels very shallow. It feels as if the world building in this project was not quite finished, or perhaps not even properly started. There are several enemy types, or species if you will: humans, beasts, ancient guardians, the lost, the corrupted, and the angry earth. I wish there was enough lore that delved more deeply into each of these, but alas, the little they do show about each seems superficial and uninvested. Not only so, but the fact that there are so many entities of different timelines in this island could have made such an interesting interaction between the characters, or even different battle styles when fighting against these entities depending on when and where they're from. But alas, most characters don't even seem to acknowledge the fact that they are from different timelines, wearing completely different looking sets of armors and outfits, and most humanoid enemies have the same kinds of attack. Like, how cool would it have been if the Roman enemies made shield walls when fighting you, like gladiators threw weighted nets at you and poked at you at a distance with their spears, or berserk Vikings going all out close combat. Possibilities are endless, but what we actually got was mostly subpar. It is important to note that the main quests have been going through rework slowly along the years. They have added some cutscenes to make it more dynamic and to show a more action-oriented story, but it is something that is still going on. I've also heard that they're going to rework the tutorial. It may change in October. New World is an action MMORPG. As such, you control the character movements with WASD. The left click will shoot your projectile or swing your melee weapon. Of course, there's more to it than that. You can jump, crouch, dodge, block depending on the weapon you have equipped, and use 3 different skills per weapon using Q, E, and R. Speaking of skills, you don't learn skills from leveling your character. When you level up, you can put stat points which give you different bonuses. Currently, the meta is to increase the bonus damage for the weapons of your choice as much as you can. But as for the actual skills, you will have to level up your proficiency in the weapon you want. The more you use a specific type of weapon, the more your proficiency on it levels up. Each weapon has 2 simple skill trees. You can equip 3 active skills and several different passive skills, the proficiency capping at level 20. This is received quite well by the players as you can mix and match whatever 2 weapons you will carry with you and change the playstyle depending on the 3 skills you have for each. And as you can see, there's a lot of different kinds of weapons varying from one-hand, two-handed, ranged, and magical weapons. Not only do you have to level up skills by using the weapons, but you can also level up gathering, refining, crafting, and what the game calls casual skills. In gathering, there is logging, which is for gathering wood of course, which you can level up by cutting trees if you have a logging axe. The more you level up your logging skill, the higher the tier of trees you can cut down. Then there's mining, which is for gathering stones, gems, and ores. You can level this up by using pickaxes on stones and ore veins and chunks. Again, the higher your mining skill, the higher the tier of stones and ores that you can mine. There's also harvesting, which is for gathering plants, fruits, and vegetables. And you can level this up by gathering things with your hands or using the harvesting sickle. The higher harvesting skill that you have, the higher tier plants you can gather. There's also tracking and skinning, which despite the name, is just skinning. It is used for gathering pelts and hides from animals. You can level this up by using your skinning knife. The higher your tracking and skinning skill, the higher tier beast that you will be able to skin. One last gathering skill is fishing, which obviously is to obtain fish, and you level this up by using fishing rod. Moving on to refining skills, these are what you use to refine the materials you got from gathering. Woodworking is of course to make the wood you gather from logging or that you bought into lumber, timber, and other crafting materials. The higher your woodworking skills, the higher tier materials you will be able to make. Smelting is what you use to refine metal ores that you got from mining or that you bought into ingots and other crafting materials. The higher your smelting skill, the higher tier materials you will be able to make. Stone cutting is what you use to refine stones and gems that you got from mining or that you bought into cut gems and bricks and other crafting materials. The higher your stone cutting skill, the higher tier material you'll be able to make. Weaving is what you use to refine the fibers from plants that you got from harvesting or that you bought into cloth and other crafting materials. The higher your weaving skill, the higher tier materials you'll be able to make. Finally, there's leatherworking, which is what you use to refine hides and pelts that you got from skinning or that you bought into leather and other crafting materials. The higher your leatherworking skill, the higher tier materials you'll be able to make. Now, onto crafting skills, which is finally where you can take the refined materials and craft into final products. Cooking is the only crafting skill in which you don't have to use refined materials. You use materials that you got mostly from supply chests, but also the meat that you got from skinning animals, or plants and fruits that you gathered from harvesting, or fish that you got from fishing, into food you eat to replenish certain things such as health, or sometimes even to receive different kinds of buffs. The higher your cooking skill, the higher tier food you will be able to cook. It is important to note that you will need to learn how to cook specific dishes from specific cooking recipes. Furnishing uses refined materials from almost all refining skills to make different furniture, trophies, storage chests, and even musical instruments. The higher your furnishing skill, the higher tier items you'll be able to make. It is important to note that you will need to learn how to make specific items from specific schematics. Arcana uses refined materials from almost all refining skills to make anything related to magic, be they magic weapons or potions. The higher your Arcana skill level, the higher tier items you'll be able to make. Jewel crafting uses refined materials from stone cutting and smelting in order to make gems which can be slotted into different equipment to get bonuses or wearable jewelry. The higher your jewel crafting skill, the higher tier items you'll be able to make. Engineering uses refined materials from smelting, woodworking, leatherworking, and weaving to make ranged weapons, spears, hatchets, and gathering tools. The higher your engineering skill, the higher tier items you'll be able to make. Armoring uses refined materials from smelting, leatherworking, and weaving to craft light, medium, and heavy armors. The higher your armoring skills, the better armors you will be able to make. Weaponsmithing uses refined materials from smelting, leatherworking, and woodworking to make two-handed weapons, swords, rapiers, round shields, kite shields, and tower shields. The higher your weaponsmithing skill level, the better weapons you'll be able to make. Now on to casual skills. There is the music skill, which levels up by using your music instruments to play different songs. Songs can be learned from music sheets, and playing a song starts a rhythm minigame which other players can join in with different instruments if they have those parts learned for that specific song. Not only so, but you can choose a buff to receive by playing the song. The better you play the song, the better the buffs will get. These buffs will also affect anyone who is inside the circle of where you played the song at. People can also opt to leave you a tip at the end of the song. Writing is something that was added only in Season 3 with a paid DLC, so if you haven't bought the DLC, then you won't be able to level this up, as you won't be able to participate in the races, nor obtain the in-game mounts. I am not 100% certain, but cash shop mounts can still be used if you bought one without having the DLC. But because you won't be able to participate in the races, you won't be able to level up your riding skill. The higher your riding skill, the faster your mount can go and the higher tier races you can participate in. Now, onto the different kinds of activities. Aside from the main quest, there's a plethora of side quests, some of which can provide a bit more insight into the island of Eternum, not to mention that some do give some decent rewards, but unfortunately, most of them are just uninspired fetch quests. There are also quests to join and to be promoted in one of the three factions. The three factions are distinguished mostly by their colors, green being the Marauders, the purple being the Syndicate, and the yellow, or orange, being the Covenant. Plot-wise, the Marauders are warriors who favor strength, whose aesthetic look more like heavily armored dudes. The Syndicate is a secret organization that favors intellect and seem to be wearing mostly light armor, and the Covenant are fanatics who want to take down any heretics and seem to be wearing mostly medium armor. Of course, that's just a plot/flavor. In practice, you can join whatever faction you like no matter what your build is. That said, the faction you join will determine which company you can join, as faction members can only join companies within their faction. Not to mention, the open world PvP is done solely against other factions, but more on that later. Each city has a faction NPC who gives you faction missions, which increases your standing within the faction and gives you faction currency that you can use with the same NPC to purchase different things, from weapons, faction-specific armor, enhancement materials, and crafting materials. Of course, unlocking better stuff as you get promoted along the way. Not only so, but this NPC also gives 3 PvP missions, which doing them increases your faction's influence in the region that you're in. Capturing a fort in the region will also increase your faction's influence and get your PvP experience point, but I'll talk about those later. In each town, there's also a town request board, which has little quests that lets you increase your personal standing within the region you're in. Increasing that region standing lets you unlock passive skills that apply when you are playing in that region. Not to mention, the higher your standing, the better houses that you can buy in that region. You can have a total of 3 houses overall, but only 1 house per region. Depending on the size of the house, you can place more or less furniture, storage chests, and trophies, which gives you certain buff depending on the trophy. Like most MMOs, decorating your house and your faction can be considered some of the true endgame activities in New World, as there are several pieces of furniture which are extremely rare for one to obtain. This makes it so a lot of people do chest routes through several different regions, in hopes of getting these rare schematics. But that's not an actual activity, it's just something that people do in the open world. The houses also give you a fast travel point to which you can travel to from anywhere without needing to get to a fast travel point like you would normally need to without a house. There is a cooldown on the fast traveling of your houses, but this can be reset by paying Azoth, a currency you just keep getting by killing monsters. If you don't want to buy a house, you can go to inns and set a fast travel point at that inn. This will allow you to fast travel to it just like you would with a house. The cooldown is shorter, but you can't reset this cooldown, and you can only have 1 active inn travel point at a time. PVE content wise, there are also several different kinds of challenges throughout the map. There are also expeditions, which are dungeons. The normal versions of them can be done at any time, and are even part of some of the main quests. But as endgame contents, you can do mutated versions of these expeditions, starting from M1 to M3, each being much harder than the previous one. But there's only 3 mutated expeditions open per week. It's important to note that each of these expeditions have mutated specific items, including artifacts, which are unique red background items that have unique perks not found in any other items. Think of it as exotic items in Destiny. So to get everything you want from these mutated dungeons, taking into consideration the rotations, it might take a few months depending on your luck. Not to mention, you will need a very good build and an equally good team to take on M3 expeditions, making that one of the few endgame activities in New World at the moment. Speaking of endgame activities, there's also 10 people raids and 20 people raids. Only a few though, and only the latest edition has artifact drops, making the older raids sort of obsolete unless you just want to get the raid specific armors or fashion. Speaking of fashion, most equipment you get, you can unlock as transmog skins by using transmog tokens in this NPC. I've made a video about all of the activity specific fashion. If you're into that, go check it out. The only other PvE activity is Invasion, which you have to sign up for. You and everyone else who signed up have to protect a fortress in that region from waves of monsters. But even if you fail, you get 1000 gold, often making a bunch of people sign up just to lose real quick to get an easy 1000 gold. Invasion, however, happens in an instanced world, letting only the people who signed up for it be able to participate. Now on to PvP activities. In the open world, there is Influence Race, in which people from the other two factions can capture influence towers in the given region while the faction who is in control of said region tries to defend. Once one of the attacking factions gather enough influence, either through these races or through PvP missions I mentioned before, one of their guilds can then declare war on the controlling guild of the enemy faction for that region, which brings us to wars. Again, the faction that has gathered enough influence in a given region can declare war, which gets scheduled with at least 24 hours of minimum notice. But anyone can sign up to participate, even from the third faction who has nothing to do with the other two who are warring each other. But the company that declared the war will be the one who decides ultimately who participates in which party. Up to 100 people can sign up for each side, but only 50 get to participate on each side. The war happens in an instance fort of the contested region, much like invasions. The defending people start inside of the fort, and the attacking people start in a little war camp outside. There are 3 checkpoints outside to be captured/defended, 3 gates to be breached/defended, and 1 checkpoint inside of the fort to be captured/defended. It's a little silly, but it goes by stages. So all 3 outside checkpoints must be captured in order for the attackers to be able to start breaching a gate. Even if they make it all the way to the gate, if they haven't captured all 3 of the checkpoints, then they can do nothing about it, which honestly makes the whole war seem more like a sport rather than an actual war. And whoever wins the war gets to control the settlement of that region, which gives several decent perks for the entire faction while they're playing in said region, and amazing perks for the company controlling the settlement. It can also set taxes and different crafting buffs for said regions, which applies to other factions as well. Speaking of instance PvP activities, there's also 3 vs 3 arena, which is self-explanatory, and it goes into matchmaking independent of factions. Just like Outpost Rush, another instance PvP matchmaking activity in which 20 players fight against 20 other players, gathering points by the amount of time they have the 3 forts in the map under their control. While these fights are going on, people can also gather metal, wood, and leather to fortify and build different kinds of defenses for each of the forts. All the while, there are 2 countdowns going on, with one being the Corrupt Portal, which if you close successfully, you can get an item to summon a demon to guard one of your fort gates, and the other countdown on the other side being the Baroness, which will freeze the score of the team who fails to defeat it. And that's the gist of it. Outpost Rush is one of the more popular activities, but every PvP activity does give you PvP experience points, which levels up your PvP track, each level having 3 checkpoints, each of which will have a few items for you to choose to claim. And though not everyone likes PvP like in most any other MMO, there are artifacts that are exclusive to the PvP track here. So most players here do tend to at least dabble in the Outpost Rush, at least until they can get some artifacts that they might need for their build. Speaking of leveling up and getting artifacts, there's also the Season Pass. There's a free track and a premium track, just like in many other games. So far, since artifacts have been introduced to the game, every Season Pass has had 2 artifacts given out in the free track. Of course, once the season is done, those 2 artifacts will either be put into the loot pool of the Outpost Rush chests, which you get from completing the Outpost Rush, or the loot pool in the PvP track. At least that's how it has been so far. But to level up your Season Pass, you have to get Season Pass experience points, which are acquired acquired either by completing the challenges in your journey tab or the activity card. Finishing 4 activities in the activity card can get you to reset the card in case you think you can't finish the card, but finishing each line gets you bonus points, and completing the whole card gets you even more points. Not only so, but with time, you get 3 wild stamps, which you can place anywhere without having finished any challenges. Not only so, but completing a line will grant you an extra wild stamp, the total limit still being 3. But unlike other games that have season passes, once you finish the season pass, you don't get anything by continuing to do these challenges, even though you can continue to complete them. And honestly, I think that's it. There's more smaller stuff you can do in the open world, like closing corrupt portals, which vary in size and levels that will affect the rewards that you get from those, but that too, most people only do them for the artifacts that are exclusive to that activity, because the normal items we get there are generally not good enough anymore with the level cap that has been raised, but more on that later. Of course, making your build for either PvE or PvP can be seen as an activity of its own. You require not only your armor, weapons, and accessories for that, but you also need the gems to slot into your equipment in order to receive several gem-specific buffs, and also a heart rune, which gives you an extra skill specific to the type of heart rune you equip. Of course, there are also seasonal stories and the occasional seasonal events that come around with event-specific rewards, which a lot of us do enjoy collecting. As far as I know, or at least from the top of my head, that's everything you can do in the game currently. So now I will give some of my opinion over all of this. I honestly think this game had, or even still has, a lot of potential. Heck, I'm sure most of us did. Almost 1 million people gave this game a chance when it first launched, and I think that speaks volumes. The public interest was definitely there, and I'll be the first to admit this is a world I have, if for a brief moment, enjoyed getting myself lost into. For those of you who have been watching my videos for a while now, you know that after I quit Destiny 2, I have been looking to fill that void with something else. I honestly and genuinely thought I had found that in New World. Perhaps because New World almost feels like a medieval fantasy Destiny 2, not only in the way that it plays, the expansive world, similarities in stories, but also some very similar mechanisms. It took me a while to realize that a lot of the negative similarities were there too. The Overpriced Cash Shop is a low-hanging fruit, but even that, different from Destiny, they sell solutions to problems they create, which of course isn't unheard of in the world of MMOs, but in New World it does seem like they tried to monetize whatever they could, from extra loadouts, getting mounts without doing the mount quests, XP boosters, to even transferring your character to another server. Transferring my character to another server does cost more than I paid for the base game. Speaking of things that are more expensive than the base game, the expansion. Now this might be a little more personal, but games here in Brazil do tend to be cheaper due to an agreement with Steam, which is why those of us in Brazil can't gift games to those who are not in Brazil. Because again, it is an agreement that Steam has with Brazil that makes the games be sold for cheaper here. That said, when the expansion came out, our prices was that of 89 Brazilian reais, which was about 70 reais cheaper than the American Steam price for the same DLC. And despite Steam showing that this DLC was not in sale during the winter sale, when the winter sale did end, we did get a price increase to match the American price. And so a lot of the Brazilians just felt like this was the DLC having been on sale during the winter sale and then going back to its original price. But if you look here, you can see that that's not what happened. They simply increased the original price of it. And if you look here, at that same time, the American prices did not change at all. But for us, a lot of us who were waiting to see if the DLC was going to go on sale suddenly had to face an almost double the original price, making it more expensive than the base game. But here's the funny part. The base game then received a price increase too, so that it wouldn't be cheaper than the DLC. If you look at the American side, there was no change overall. The original price was the same since the beginning, while for us here in Brazil, we had at least 2 price increases. So what in the world is going on here? And I realize this is an issue that players in most other countries did not face. It feels unfair and like we were put in the corner for reasons no one told us about. And like it or not, stuff like that does affect the way people see the game, specifically the people who were affected. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I won't go into the details of all the other drama that Amazon Games did, because it feels like I would be just repeating what everyone has already said multiple times. I just wanted to mention the price change in some countries, as that is something that not a lot of people seem to be aware of. Now, aside from all that, one of the biggest gripes that I personally have with the game is that this game is not horizontal progression. You just level up to a soft cap, and then what matters is your gear score, or power level in Destiny. While a lot of MMOs do tend to use a mixture of horizontal and vertical systems where you do have to level up to a level cap set in the base game, and then from then on, expansion or no expansion, you do get endgame gear score loot. But here in New World, they do increase the level cap with every expansion, but paywall that level cap behind said expansion. In other words, with the Rise of the Angry Earth expansion, the level cap went from level 60 to level 65, meaning those of us who had reached level 60 at the base game couldn't level up like the other players could with the DLC, which would have been fine if they didn't touch on the endgame content that we were already doing in the base game, but no, they also changed the requirements of the activities we were already doing to the new level cap. In other words, all of the mutated expeditions that we were already doing in the base game couldn't be accessed anymore unless we purchased the expansion and leveled ourselves up to the new level cap. So in other words, with every expansion, we have to get to the end game again. We are constantly no longer in the end game whenever an expansion comes out. And that's something I mentioned in my Destiny video. It's what made me quit Destiny 1 back in the day, and it's like New World got so inspired by how Bungie ran Destiny that they chose to do all the sketchy things too, and that really breaks my heart, because if you take a step back from all that drama and look at what this game has to offer in of itself, it is an amazing MMO. It might not be a groundbreaking MMO, might not be the best one even compared to some of the older stuff, and it's definitely not the most complex one, but it did offer us a lot. It did stand on its own 2 feet, and it did show us that it could be more if only AGS had kept up the momentum. It's no secret that they are working on the Lord of the Rings MMO now, and no secret that Amazon may want that success that Fallout TV show brought to Fallout 76. It's something that they want replicated in their Lord of the Rings MMO when they pump out more of the Lord of the Rings show on their Prime. So one can assume that's where Amazon Game Studios' focus is on right now. Heck, looking at it that way, it's not surprising that the last 2 seasons in New World have been very lackluster compared to the previous ones. Even though this current season was delayed like a month, it came out with less content than any other season. And when they told us that they had something big in store for us, their big announcement was just consoles. A lot of the new stuff they said they were adding honestly just feels like another season instead of a new big update. Most of the changes will have been in the story campaign and early to mid game of New World. Of course, we'll have to check it out when Eternum actually comes out, and I will be wholeheartedly wishing and hoping that it breathes new life to the game. But if that is all it is, I can't imagine how it will retain its current players. Bringing in new players from consoles is great, it is, but AGS can't forget that they already had a huge audience when they first launched, that they weren't able to retain, mostly because of lack of content. If their new big update is much of the same, sure, we'll see a lot of new players in the beginning, but what's to keep those new players from leaving once they reach the end game like we have? Anyway, I didn't mean to get emotional, but it's hard not to when you see a game that you were looking forward to seeing its future kinda get held back by its own developers. But yeah. So taking into account everything I showed you, from the cold objective look to the heated ranty part, is New World worth it right now? Right now, before Eternum, is New World really worth it? And I guess the answer is the same with most MMOs. For newcomers, yeah, I think so. Depending on where you live, you might have some trouble matchmaking with other players to do everything, simply because the player numbers have dwindled quite a bit as of now, since most of us are just waiting for Eternum to come out. But if you can get a few buddies of you to start playing this game with you, I think you can definitely enjoy putting in 100 hours or so into it, maybe even a couple hundred hours if you are like me. But returning players, if you like PvP, then I guess OPR is still there. But for PvE, maybe hold on until Eternum comes out to play their, newly improved game experience, I guess. I don't know. And even if this game were to fail and shut down, it wouldn't be the first time. We've all been there, seeing our beloved MMO get shut down. And I'm sure there's so many of us hoping against hope that it really doesn't come to that here. But we'll have to see when Eternum actually comes out. And who knows, maybe after Eternum comes out, I might make a follow-up video to this if things start to look up. Or not. It will depend on my state of mind by then. But at the end of it all, I only have one sentiment. It would be a damn shame to see this game go away.